Skyrim lets you party with Daedra, get drunk with Sanguine, bully a priest for Molag Bal, and become Meridia's glorified exterminator. But not every prince shows up. Some are missing, others whisper from behind locked doors. Welcome to the Gaming Hearth. My name is Tom, and around here we pull apart the big gaming worlds next to a warm fire. If you like your gaming lore with some sharp edges and a bit of mischief, subscribe and join the discussion. It's cheaper than selling your soul to Clavicus Vile, and you get to keep the dog. Today we're hunting the forgotten Daedric princes of Skyrim, the ones that never really got a grand quest, only lurking back in the margins, or were quietly cut loose along the way. We'll cross-reference Morrowind and Oblivion, sticking mostly to the in-game universe, but we'll also sprinkle in a pragmatic nod to when reality peeks through the veil. Expect secrets, missing gods, and a web spinner who prefers you to do the murdering for her. Before we talk about the princes who never made it, let's take stock of Skyrim's guest list. 15 Daedric princes turn up with their own quests. Some subtle, others impossible to miss. Azura, Meridia, and Boethia play the divas of prophecy, light, and betrayal. They get their shrines, their booming voices, and their moral ultimatums. Then there's the darker crowd, Molag Bal, Nymeria, Mephala, drawing you into torture, cannibal banquets, and a whispering door in Dragon's Reach. Perfect dinner party material. For the sheer chaos side of things, you've got Hearth, Sanguine, and Jyggalag. One drags you on a werewolf hunt, one takes you on a drunken wedding crashing spree, and the other hosts a tea party in a dead emperor's head. A standard week in Tamriel really. The rest, Clavicus Vile, Hermaeus Mora, Malakath, Vermina, Pyrite, and even Mehrunes Dagon on his post-apocalyptic sabbatical, they all nudge you into their own brand of mayhem, each dangling an artifact as a consolation prize. Now together they form Skyrim's Daedric pantheon, quests that are funny, horrifying, or just plain bizarre. But for all this divine meddling, a few princes were strangely quiet, and that silence we're going to look into today, and this is where things get interesting. And here is where things get awkward, because if you're counting shrines, quests, booming divine monologues in Skyrim, there is only one prince who is entirely absent. No shrine, no artifact, not even a cheeky reference in dialogue. Jyggalag, the Daedric Prince of Order, who didn't even bother to show up. Now if you only played Skyrim, you'd be forgiven for thinking Jyggalag was some fanfiction side note. But in Oblivion Shivering Isles, he was the whole show. His curse, doomed to live out most of eternity as Jyggalag, the Mad God. And it was finally broken. The hero of Kvatch fought him head on, ended the Grey March, and freed him from his cycle. But by the time of Skyrim, Jyggalag should have been his own prince again. So why was he missing? In universe, the theories are endless. Maybe Jyggalag was still rebuilding after a millennia trapped as Jyggalag. Maybe the other princes, terrified of pure order, shoved him back into obscurity. Or maybe, and this one's my favourite, Jyggalag looked at Skyrim's civil war, dragons, and rampant mead addiction and thought, no, absolutely not, too messy, call me when you've cleaned up. Out of universe, the explanation is a bit more mundane. Bethesda had just told Jyggallag's story in Shivering Isles. Bringing him back in Skyrim would have meant either repeating that arc somewhat, or trying to explain Jyggalag and Jyggalag coexisting. A bit of a lore headache nobody wanted or needed. Fun fact though, data suggests he was at least considered. Wes Johnson, who voiced Jyggalag, was reportedly lined up to voice Jyggalag as well, so somewhere in development Jyggalag still had a chance, before being cut. Order itself ironically deleted from the game files. So in Skyrim's Daedric pantheon, Jyggalag is the prince who wasn't invited to the party, forgotten by mortals, ignored by developers, and probably sulking in a very tidy symmetrical realm somewhere in Oblivion, which, let's be honest, is exactly what the Prince of Order would do. But if his silence is telling, then our next prince is even more interesting, because she is in Skyrim, only she'd rather whisper from the shadows than stand in the light. Enter Mephala, the web spinner. So if Jyggalag is absent entirely, Mephala takes a different approach. She is in Skyrim, but only just. No shrine on a mountaintop, no booming monologue. Instead, she hides behind a locked basement door in Dragon's Reach. That's the quest, the Whispering Door. The Jarl's youngest child, Nelkir, has been corrupted by a disembodied voice. That voice belongs to Mephala, Daedric prince of secrets, lies and assassination. She urges you to fetch the Ebony Blade, a cursed sword that drinks the trust of your friends. The more allies you betray, the stronger it becomes. Skyrim doesn't even pretend to dress this up as a moral choice. If you go down that path, you're literally murdering your mates to sharpen a Daedric artifact. And that's it. No grand confrontation, no grand speech, just whispers from the dark, and a sword that feeds on treachery, which honestly is very on brand. Mephala doesn't need spectacle, she thrives in subtlety. But here's the kicker, the Whispering Door was meant to be far bigger. Cut content in Skyrim's files shows Mephala's whispers spreading to all of Jarl Balgruuf's children. They'd commit crimes, cause chaos, and eventually conspire to murder the Jarl himself. Whiterun collapsing from the inside, its future heirs driven mad by a hidden voice. Now that's a real Mephala plot, but it was cut, likely for being too dark or too complicated for Skyrim's Civil War narrative. What we got was the abridged version, one creepy kid, one creepy sword, and one very quiet Daedric prince. Compare this to her other roles. In Oblivion, Mephala had you ruin an entire village by sparking a feud until they destroyed themselves. Still one of the darkest Daedric quests in the series. And in Morrowind, she was openly worshipped by the Molag Bal assassins. She spoke through their leaders, guiding political murders in the shadows of Dunmer society. So in Skyrim, Mephala's quest feels like a whisper of what it could have been. The in-universe explanation, she's subtle, working through a child and a cursed blade, never exposing herself directly. The pragmatic and maybe boring explanation is Bethesda pulled back at the last moment, leaving us with a trimmed down quest that hints at the darker version behind the curtain. Either way, Mephala proves you don't need a shrine or a light show to make an impact. A whisper is enough, and that whisper lingers long after the quest is over. Next up though, a prince who is present in Skyrim only folded into someone else's story. She never got her own quest because she prefers working through thieves and shadows. This is Nocturnal. Nocturnal's case is different again. She isn't absent, far from it. She's central to one of Skyrim's biggest faction storylines, but she's the only Daedric prince who doesn't get her own official quest. Instead, Nocturnal rules from the shadows of the Thieves Guild. The entire guild's luck dries up because Mercer Frey nicks her artifact, the Skeleton Key. Without her blessing, the guild falls apart. By the time you stumble into the mess, you're dragged into the Nightingales, a secretive trio of Nocturnal's agents, and sworn into her service to set things right. It all culminates in the Twilight Sepulchre, where you restore the Skeleton Key to its place, reopen Ebonmere Portal, and get a spectral glimpse of Nocturnal herself. She doesn't monologue though, she doesn't demand tribute, she simply acknowledges your oath and ties your soul to hers forever. A little fine print that most players cheerfully click accept on. Compare that to Oblivion, where Nocturnal had her own shrine, a tidy little fetch quest for the Eye of Nocturnal, handing you the Skeleton Key directly, or to Daggerfall, where she had no problem appearing in person. Skyrim makes her influence quieter, more integrated, which fits perfectly for the Mistress of Shadows. She doesn't need her own altar, she just pulls the strings of an entire guild. Out of universe, there was a practical reason too. The Skeleton Key is an unbreakable lockpick. Leave that with the player forever and you basically kill the lockpicking system. So the devs wove it into the Thieves Guild story and made you hand it back at the end. No shiny artifact for the collection, no Oblivion Walker achievement tick, just the eternal privilege of being Nocturnal's errand boy. In universe though, this is exactly the point. Nocturnal doesn't deal in flashy rewards, she deals in debts and obligations. If you serve her, you serve for life and beyond. Which brings us to the punchline. Skyrim had almost all the princes, but not quite. one erased, one whispering in secret, one folded into a guild. And that, neatly, is why these three feel like the forgotten Daedric princes of Skyrim. So there you have it. Skyrim gave us 15 Daedric quests. Some of the best, weirdest and darkest moments in the game. But a few of the princes never made the cut. Jyggalag erased from the board, the god of order quietly deleted by both lore and devs. Mephala whispering from the shadows with a quest that hints at something darker, cut down to a single blade and a whispering door. And Nocturnal, ever present but working entirely through the Thieves Guild, never stepping out with a quest of her own. Together, they're the forgotten side of Skyrim's Daedric pantheon. Not absent or irrelevant, but hidden, reduced or waiting in the wings. Which, when you think about it, is rather fitting. The Daedra don't all need centre stage, some of them prefer to pull the strings from off screen. But I'd love to hear your take. Which Daedric prince would you have liked to see more of in Skyrim? Would Jyggalag's return made sense? Should Mephala have had her Whiterun plot restored? Or maybe you just like Nocturnal to hand over the skeleton key and let us keep it? Thank you very much. Drop your thoughts in the comments, I always enjoy reading them, and if you enjoy diving into Elder Scrolls lore or any type of gaming lore, I'll be covering a lot here, so subscribe for more. Alright guys, that will do for this one. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.